I've always believed that dance is one of the freest forms of expression, and one can express all forms of feelings by dancing and moving in any way one wishes. A dance is very personal, and if you call it a dance, it's a dance. There are specific cultures and specific ways and repertoires and ways we would move for a particular dance, but the philosophy and what I believe dance is, first of all, it should come from within, and it should express what we believe, what we want to tell, how we feel. I think dance has always been around ever since humankind has lived. My name is Joanne Lourdes Camilleri, and I'm a performer instructor in the Middle Eastern arts, and I direct and produce. My parents are from Malta. Our roots go way back from the island of Malta, and I was born here in Canada. Malta has a huge Arabic influence, and it lays on the crossroads of the Middle East, north of Africa, and just south of Algiers and Tunis, and has a very much an Arabic influence. And I'm very, very attached to my roots, and I try to keep the culture going here in Canada too. I became interested in belly dance from the first moment I saw it. And when I was a young girl, I was allowed to pick a extracurricular activity, and I chose dance. So I did grow up with the Western repertoire, and then as I grew, I was always interested in all the different cultures of dance. And then in the late 80s, I had the opportunity to see belly dance firsthand, and I was completely enthralled by it. It just looked so beautiful, and the movements of the body were so intriguing. So I started to dabble in it and did some research, and I realized that the belly dance moves are actually very natural to the body, whereas the Western dance is very disciplined, which is wonderful, and I was so happy that I did take these disciplines, whereas the Middle Eastern dance is a little more free-form, and it's not as hard on the body too. So it's actually something you could do for a very, very long time. And with those benefits, I figured if I started taking belly dance, I could also do it for a very, very long time. For me, it's the type of dance that brings the sensual and the spiritual together, which I really enjoy performing and moving in these ways too. It's very good for us too. We work all our muscles in the front and relax the ones in the back. And so therefore, you're relieving back pain. So when I'm teaching, I make sure, of course, that everybody's in the right stance. But I've realized with the isolations that we do in belly dance and the vibrations, it's like a self-massage. You're working a muscle to the maximum, relaxing and breathing and moving. So it's actually a really, really wonderful form of art that you could do for a very, very long time. The history of belly dance goes way back. It's known to be the first form of dance ever known to men, which started, they say, in the Sumerian times in Mesopotamia. It was during the first civilizations that were created in the world, and that's when belly dance was created. And it's evolved from there. Belly dance exists in many different forms, many different cultures. Of course, as we know, it exists in Egypt, but it also exists and has traces going through India, Africa, and all through the Middle East. And if you look at dance today, you will see traces of belly dance in their repertoire. The first time belly dance was seen by the American public was during the Chicago World Fair, and that was in 1893. So, speaking of legends, the performer that was performing for this particular event, which was a world event of its kind, her name was Little Egypt, and she performed more of a gypsy, kind of Gawazi type of dance, which was more of a street dance. And so from then on, this is when we saw the dance. So there are different types of belly dance in Middle Eastern arts. So we have belly dance that comes from Egypt, belly dance that comes from Morocco, belly dance from Lebanon, from Turkey, from the Balkans. It's all, through all that area is influenced the belly dance movements, right down to the attire. In the Turkish belly dance, it's usually the costumes that move a lot and they flow. And they like to use the zils, which are the finger cymbals in the Turkish art. In Morocco, the costumes are a little bit less scantily and you're more covered. And they're very, very hippie in the sense that the hips move much, much more. The belts are worn a little bit lower. And the Egyptian style of belly dance, the costumes are a little more tight on the body, a little more glamorous. Costume consists of what we call a bra, and it's usually embellished with jewels. Today especially, they're embellished with jewels. You can have them embellished with fringe or coins. Coins are a little bit more tribal, a little bit more back in the day. Again, the fringe is more of a Turkish style, and then the jewels are very much an Egyptian uniform that we'd like to wear for that particular dance. And then you've got the skirt, and the skirt can have a slit, if you like, where you're showing the leg, or not. It's up to the performer. The skirt can be very tapered and close to the body and very form-fitting, or the skirt can be wide and what we call a full skirt. So it moves with the dancer. Also, they have what we call a girdle, and it's a belt. So it's either a coin belt, a jeweled belt, or a fringe belt. There could be movement or no movement in the skirt, depending again on the culture. And the dancer will wear jewels on her arms or gloves, sometimes hand jewels and wrists, earrings, of course, and a veil. Through time, it's changed in the weight and how it's created. But the veil is actually a Western concept. It went from the East, came to the West, and the veil was created here in North America and then went back to the East. And then they played with the veil and made their moves, and it came back and forth. We all pretty much dance bare feet, and so we're close to the earth, except for in Lebanon and in Turkey. They like to wear shoes, even up to stilettos, where they would belly dance in high shoes. So the Egyptian style, one would say, is very traditional, but it would depend on what you think is traditional. The movements are very, very isolated. Lebanese is a little more free-form, a little more balletic. Again, Moroccan is using the lower half of the body much more. And the Turkish is a little bit more like the Lebanese, where they're dancing and flowing and moving arms a little bit more different and more balletic. Because I was brought up in the Western disciplines, my repertoire includes the traditions that come with belly dance. I love a little bit of tribal in my belly dance too, which is a little bit more modern, even though it's called tribal, which you would think is much older in time. So it's definitely a mélange of my style that I've picked up from the West. I loved hands, so I make sure the hands are in the right form and that we use the fingers, and a lot of dancers don't concentrate on the hands. So my style is a little more grounded, less balletic. It definitely touches on the Egyptian style and the Lebanese and the Turkish. Like the Sultan's Tent here in Canada, we perform together, and there are usually one or two, sometimes 3 or 4 dancers, and that is common here where we perform. It's not really that common. It is more beautiful, I think, to have a few dancers together and create a story. And the longer you dance with performers too, you can improvise with each other right on the spot, which is great. We went way back in time. Way back in the 17th century, there were dancers called the Wayalim, and they were the performers that were well educated, that could read, write, compose, and sing, that were allowed to dance, and they would dance in the temples. They were unfortunately brought to the streets after being highly taxed. It's a very long story in terms of why they were on the street, and they were mixed up with the Gawazi, which are the gypsy dancers. But it was always done in a group in terms of dancing on the street. It wasn't usually one dancer, it was a few dancers. A performer should tell a story while they're performing, and usually the dancer is telling a story through the music or through her moves, through her accents of her hands, with her eyes, or using her props. The cultures brought up the props, and then they were used in different ways to tell stories and to, again, show the isolations. For example, when you balance a sword, you're moving and performing these isolations. So the technique takes time to learn, for sure, and it's something that you need to practice. But the question about the props is interesting because it's evolved through the times, and in some cultures they won't use any props. My sister Mary has always been very, very close to animals. She raised 2 Siberian tigers from pups. And my father, who's so talented in construction, created a huge kennel for them, and they grew up in her backyard. She had over 60 acres, and her neighbors loved them, and they supported her. She played with them up until they were about 400 pounds. When she moved to the East Coast, she had to give them up, sadly, to the zoo because the island wouldn't have them. But that's how I became really comfortable dancing with animals, especially a snake, which is what I do today. So it was about 15 years ago that I started performing with snakes. I have a boa and a python that live with me, and we perform together. I love performing with Lilith, who is the boa. She's very, very intriguing, and we work well together. And Monty, the python, is a little smaller. He's a male, and I love performing with him too. He is a ball python, so he is not as keen on stretching out the way Lilith does, my boa. But I can perform with both of them, and they're both fine together and very kind with each other, and we have no problem performing together. I mostly perform with Lilith, who is the boa. I've been teaching for the last 20 years, and I teach at the Toronto University here in Canada. I've done workshops for the faculty, and I also am teaching at the Redwood Theatre in the East End. And I found that belly dance became very mainstream in the late 90s, and so my classes were up to 40. I would have to, of course, break them up. And today, belly dancing is still very, very prominent. There are so many schools, and it's a little bit more saturated now. So my classes are not as large. They're a little bit more personal, which is wonderful too. And I hope to continue teaching dance. Canada being so multicultural, it's wonderful. So they have totally welcomed belly dance and all the other forms of dance that come through the other cultures. I think because it's such a unfamiliar form of dance and so opposite to the Western repertoire, I think Canadians took a little bit of time to accept the dance and to appreciate it and to respect it. But today, I do believe that the Western people here in Canada have really accepted belly dance and welcomed it and do appreciate the differences and how exotic and beautiful it is. So in my opinion, Fire Show continues the art of belly dance. And today I'm going to show you something very special.